Eliza had never been more certain of anything in her life. She was done waiting, done relying on others to handle what had now become her personal battle. As she drove through the dark streets, her hands gripped the steering wheel with fierce determination. Every mile brought her closer to a confrontation she knew would be inevitable. She had mapped out every possible place Miranda might be hiding. There was one location in particular that kept coming back to her, an old, forgotten warehouse on the edge of town near the railway tracks. She had passed it countless times but had never thought much of it. But now, it felt like the one place where Miranda would go. The one place where everything could finally be decided. Eliza arrived before the sun even began to rise. The warehouse stood in complete darkness, only the faintest outlines of its decaying structure visible under the dim streetlights. She parked a distance away, not wanting to alert anyone of her presence. Before she got out of the car, she checked the pepper spray in her pocket and the phone she had in her hand. She had called Alvarez and told him where she was, but she couldn't afford to wait for backup. Not anymore. She knew she couldn't let Miranda slip away again. The warehouse door creaked as Eliza approached it, her breath shallow as she stepped into the cold, empty space. Inside, the air was thick with dust and mildew. Broken glass crunched under her boots as she moved deeper into the building. Then she saw it, a small flicker of movement in the far corner. Miranda. She was crouched in front of a pile of old boxes, her back turned, unaware of Eliza's presence. For a moment, Eliza hesitated. She could hear Miranda's low, mumbling voice. "She'll never know. She'll never understand. He's mine, and I'll make her see that." Eliza stepped forward, the sound of her boots alerting Miranda. "You're wrong," Eliza said, her voice breaking the silence like thunder. "You never had him. He was never yours." Miranda spun around, her eyes wide with a mixture of anger and desperation. "You," she hissed. "You took him from me. You took everything from me." "I didn't take anything from you," Eliza replied, her voice steady now. "You had no right to him. You lost that right a long time ago." Miranda took a step toward her, shaking with emotion.
"You don't understand."
"I never wanted this. I just wanted to protect him. He's mine, and you can't keep him away from me forever." "You never understood what it means to be a mother," Eliza said, taking a step closer. "A mother doesn't stalk her child. A mother doesn't use fear to control. You lost him the moment you let your obsession take over." Miranda's face twisted with fury. "You think you're better than me?" she spat. "You think I'm the villain in your story?" "No," Eliza said, her eyes hardening. "You're the villain in your own story. And I'm the mother who's going to make sure my son stays safe." For a moment, they stood there, the tension thick enough to choke on. Then, as if on cue, Miranda lunged. But Eliza was faster. She had expected it. With one swift motion, she sprayed the pepper spray straight into Miranda's face. The woman screamed, stumbling backward, her hands clawing at her eyes as the burning sensation spread. "Stay down, Miranda," Eliza warned, her voice calm but firm. Miranda fell to the ground, her breath ragged, her face twisted in pain. "You won't stop me," she muttered, her voice barely audible. "I already have," Eliza said, stepping back, her heart pounding in her chest. "The police are on their way. This ends tonight." Miranda's body shook with rage, but she made no move to stand. Eliza turned and walked away. She didn't need to look back. The sound of sirens was growing louder. The nightmare was over. Epilogue. Weeks later, Eliza sat in Caleb's room, watching him play with his toys. The chaos that had once consumed her life had finally started to subside. The police had made their arrests. Miranda had been caught, and with the evidence Eliza had provided, she would face justice. But Eliza knew the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the quiet moments like this, moments where her son was safe and the shadows no longer loomed. As Caleb looked up at her and smiled, Eliza allowed herself a rare moment of peace. The worst was behind them, but she would always be ready, just in case. A few days later, Eliza was folding laundry upstairs when she heard Caleb talking to someone. His voice was soft, like he was trying not to be overheard. She crept down the hallway. Caleb was in his room, sitting under a blanket tent made from bedsheets. The drone sat beside him, powered off. "Yeah, I saw her do that," he was whispering. "Mummy always checks the kitchen windows. She doesn't know I noticed." Eliza's heart jumped. "Who are you talking to?" she asked, stepping into the room. Caleb looked up. "No one." She knelt beside him. "Caleb, were you talking to someone?" He hesitated. "Just pretending." Eliza waited. Then he added quietly, "Auntie Miranda told me to keep secrets. She said not to tell you, because you'd be mad." Eliza's breath caught. "What secrets, baby?" He shrugged. "She just says stuff when she calls me on the drone." Eliza's face went cold. It was not just a toy. It was a bridge. A way in. And Miranda had used it not only to undermine her, but to reach Caleb directly, in private. That night, Eliza locked the drone in a drawer. Then she installed a new security app on every device she owned. She deleted unknown numbers from Caleb's tablet and changed all the passwords in the house. But the damage had already begun. Miranda had found a way in. And now Eliza knew this wasn't just boundary crossing. It was infiltration. March arrived with sunshine that felt almost suspicious after the gray stretch of winter. Eliza kept busy. School runs, yoga classes, weekly dinners with Nina, but the growing paranoia gnawed at her beneath the surface. Caleb seemed lighter since the drone disappeared, though he did ask for it once or twice. Eliza claimed it was broken. He didn't press. Then came the invitation. A crisp white envelope in Caleb's backpack slipped between his homework sheets. No stamp, no address, just Caleb written in perfect looping script. Inside, a card printed on heavy paper with glossy colors. "You are invited to a very special party. Saturday, March 22nd at 3 p.m. Hosted by Auntie Miranda. At our secret clubhouse." No location. No contact number. Only a small hand-drawn map on the back, the kind that might have come from a child's imagination. Eliza stared at it, trying to decipher the lines. It looked like a park, maybe a clearing near the woods. The vague area circled in red. She turned the card over again. Our secret clubhouse. Her blood turned to ice. At first, she told herself it was harmless. Miranda trying to stay involved. A desperate bid for attention. But the secrecy. The bypassing of her.
The map.
Eliza rang Donna. "She's been quiet lately," Donna said, her voice thin. "I haven't seen her since New Year's." She gave Caleb an invitation to a secret party.
What?
"Are you sure it's from her? Her name's on it, and it came in Caleb's bag." Donna sighed. "I'll talk to her." But Eliza had little faith in that. Donna loved her sister, but she also enabled her, always minimizing the danger. To her, Miranda was eccentric.
Passionate.
Not predatory. Eliza wasn't willing to take that chance. That evening, she drove to the park nearest their home, the one that seemed to match the sketch. As the sun dipped low, casting amber light across the grass, she followed the rough directions from the map. A narrow dirt trail led off the main path, winding into a small copse of trees. There, nestled among trunks and brambles, stood a makeshift structure, plywood, tarpaulin, plastic crates. Not a proper building, but clearly constructed with care. Inside were pillows, coloring books, a chipped mirror, and, Eliza's heart clenched, pictures of Caleb pinned to one wall. Photos she had never taken. One of him in his bedroom. One of him brushing his teeth. One of him asleep. She stumbled back. This was not imagination. This was surveillance. And Miranda had built this shrine in the woods. For a child who wasn't hers. Eliza took photos of everything. Then she called the police. They came, took statements, asked questions, and promised to follow up. But no arrests were made. No charges filed. Miranda wasn't at the scene. The clubhouse, they said, wasn't illegal. The photos were disturbing, yes, but without evidence of harm, it was a gray area. Eliza burned with helpless fury. The next day, Caleb found the party card in the bin. He asked softly, "Why can't I go, Mummy?" Eliza held him close. "Because some people confuse love with control," she said gently. And it's my job to keep you safe. She didn't tell him that night she had started sleeping with a bat by her bed, or that she had installed cameras, because she had seen the pictures, because Miranda had crossed the line, and because something told her the worst was still ahead. 2 days after the clubhouse discovery, Eliza filed for a restraining order. The process was clinical, impersonal: forms, interviews, statements. The clerk at the courthouse didn't flinch when Eliza handed over the printed photos of Miranda's makeshift den, complete with the voyeuristic shots of Caleb. "You've done the right thing," the woman said quietly. "It's better to act early." Still, Eliza felt no relief. When the court granted a temporary order of protection, it prohibited Miranda from contacting Caleb or coming within 100 yards of him, his school, or their home. It was something, at least. But Eliza knew her sister-in-law. This wouldn't stop her. Not really. Miranda had always thrived on blurred boundaries. As a teenager, she had once turned up at Donna's university lectures pretending to be a student, just to feel included. As an adult, she crashed weddings she hadn't been invited to, insisting she belonged. This wasn't someone who respected lines. Eliza sat Caleb down and explained that Auntie Miranda was going away for a while, that he wasn't to speak to her if he saw her, and to tell a teacher if she ever came near. He nodded, solemn and obedient. "Did I do something bad?" he asked. Eliza's chest twisted.
No, darling.
Not at all. Some grown-ups don't understand the rules. That's all. But Caleb's eyes held something older than his years. A creeping doubt. As if part of him suspected there was more he wasn't being told. Days passed without incident. The drone was never mentioned again. School drop-offs became Eliza's time to scan every face near the gates, always half expecting to see Miranda in a hat and glasses, lurking behind a car or tree. Then came the email. It bypassed spam filters. No subject. Just a message from a burner account. "You can't keep him from me. We were bonded. He called me Starmum. I was meant to protect him from you." Eliza's hands trembled on the keyboard. She forwarded it to the police, who thanked her politely and noted it in their file.
But again, no arrest.
No action. At night, Caleb began sleepwalking. Eliza would find him standing at the foot of her bed, eyes half open, murmuring fragments of things, words like treehouse and Starmum and play again. Once he tried to open the front door. She installed extra locks the next day. Then, during a routine visit to the supermarket, Caleb tugged her arm and whispered, "Mummy." Auntie Miranda just walked past the cereal. Eliza spun around. No one. She searched every aisle, her heart a trapped bird in her chest. Nothing. Maybe Caleb had imagined it. Maybe not. That night, Eliza rang Donna again. "She's still not answering my calls," Donna admitted. "But maybe she just needs help. You know how she gets when she fixates.
She's lonely."
"She's always been a little off." "This isn't a little off," Eliza snapped. "She was in my house, watching my son. She built a shrine. That's not eccentric. That's dangerous." There was a long silence on the other end. "You're right," Donna said finally. "But if the police won't stop her, what will?" Eliza didn't know. All she knew was that someone had left a bundle of dried flowers on their front step that afternoon, wrapped in blue tissue paper, with a tag that read, "For my star boy. With love, always." The evening air in Santa Rosa was unusually still that night. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Eliza triple-checked the locks. Every door, every window. She drew the curtains tightly and placed a chair beneath the back door handle. It had become a nightly ritual, one she never imagined she'd need in a town like this. Caleb was fast asleep upstairs, curled beneath his dinosaur blanket, unaware that his world had become the center of someone else's obsession. At 2:41 in the morning, the alarm went off. A shrill, slicing scream through the silence. Eliza jolted awake, heart pounding. She lunged for her phone, grabbed the baseball bat she kept by her bed, and crept to the stairs. The motion detector by the back door had triggered. She moved silently, bare feet against the hardwood floor, holding her breath as she reached the bottom step.
There was no sound now.
Just the faint creaking of the house settling. Or something else. Eliza peered into the kitchen. The back door's deadbolt was still in place. The chair had shifted slightly. She inched forward. There, on the floor just inside the door, lay something unexpected. A single photograph. It showed Caleb sitting on the swings at school, his little legs tucked up, a bright smile on his face. Taken from a distance. From behind the fence, most likely. Eliza's throat tightened. The image wasn't just inappropriate, it was fresh. That swing set had only been installed a week ago. She dropped the bat and ran to the alarm console, punching in the code to silence it. Then she dialed the police. The responding officers were sympathetic but tired. They scanned the yard, took down her statement, and promised to escalate the case internally. This isn't just harassment, Eliza insisted. It's stalking. She's breaking the restraining order. Understood, the younger officer said. We'll see what we can do. She watched their car disappear into the night. Then she sat on the floor, hugging her knees, the photo clutched in her hand. It was no longer a question of if Miranda would return. Only when. The next day, she took Caleb to stay at a friend's house across town. A mother from the school, Patricia, who had once been a police dispatcher. She didn't ask many questions. Just opened the door and said, "We've got a spare bed." Eliza returned home alone. She knew she wouldn't sleep, but she needed to be there. She needed to catch Miranda. To see it with her own eyes. No more photos. No more whispers in the dark. That night, she stayed up in the living room, a kitchen knife beside her and a thermos of strong coffee within reach. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Just after 3 a.m., she heard the faintest scuff of a shoe against wood. From upstairs. Caleb's room. Eliza froze. He wasn't there. He was across town. Knife in hand, she crept up the staircase. At the top, the door to his room was ajar. She pushed it open. A figure stood by the window, silhouetted by moonlight. Female. Hair falling in messy waves. "Miranda," Eliza whispered. The figure turned. It was her, wearing a star-patterned jumper, smiling faintly, as if caught in a dream. "I was just tucking him in," she said softly. "He gets cold without the stars." "He's not here," Eliza snapped. "You're breaking the law. You need help." Miranda's face twisted, not in anger, but in something worse. Pity. "You don't deserve him, Eliza. You don't see him. Not the way I do. He's special. Get out of my house." But Miranda stepped closer. "I made him a promise. In the treehouse. That I'd protect him. From you." Eliza's hand tightened on the knife. The police arrived 7 minutes later, summoned by the panic button Eliza had finally installed. By the time they entered, Miranda was gone. Again. But they found a small, star-shaped locket on Caleb's pillow. Inside it, a photo of Caleb. And a single strand of his hair. Eliza sat across from Detective Alvarez in the police station the next morning, her fingers clenched tightly around a paper cup of stale coffee. Her voice was raw from explaining the night's events again and again, each retelling dragging her deeper into a fog of disbelief. "She was in his room," she said quietly. "She was talking to someone who wasn't there." Alvarez, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s with crow's feet etched deep into her skin, leaned back in her chair. "We've issued a warrant," she said. "But you know how it is. She'll keep running until she doesn't." "She's not just running," Eliza replied. "She's planning something. She thinks he's hers." Alvarez hesitated, then slid a thin file across the desk. "There's something we didn't show you before. Thought it might just scare you more. But now maybe you need to see it." Eliza opened it. Inside were transcripts of Miranda's therapy sessions, pages recovered from the court's psych evaluation, scribbled notes in the margins, and photos. One image stopped Eliza cold. Miranda, aged 14, cradling a plastic baby doll wrapped in a blue towel, sitting inside a hospital waiting room. Her eyes were wide, empty. The caption: "She named the doll Caleb." "She's been obsessed with this fantasy for years," Alvarez explained. "Told her caseworker back, then she had a son who was taken from her. There never was one." Eliza felt a chill spread through her spine. So, she's rewritten her delusion to fit my Caleb. Exactly. Later that evening, Eliza stood by the swing set at the local park. She had asked Patricia to bring Caleb for a short visit, supervised in public. She needed to see him, to hold him. He came running across the grass, arms wide. "Mummy." She scooped him up and clutched him tightly, his warmth grounding her. Patricia approached, holding a flask of tea. "Any word?" She was in our house again. Left a locket under his pillow. "She says she made a promise to protect him from me." Patricia's face paled. "That's not just obsession. That's the beginning of something dangerous." Eliza knew it too. That night, she made a decision. She called her ex-husband, Andrew. He lived in Sacramento, had only seen Caleb 3 times in the last year, and had never shown an ounce of interest in custody. But he had a secure home, a partner with a law background, and most importantly, he was far from Santa Rosa. "I need your help," she said, after 20 minutes of awkward small talk. "You need to take Caleb for a while." There was a long pause on the other end. "You're asking me to take him full-time?" "Just temporarily. Until this woman is caught. She's dangerous, Andrew. And she wants him." Surprisingly, he didn't argue. Perhaps guilt had finally crept into his conscience. Perhaps his partner had convinced him of the gravity of the situation. "All right," he said. "You bring him up. We'll work something out." It broke her heart, but Eliza packed a bag for Caleb the next morning and explained it gently as they drove north. "Mummy needs you to go on a little holiday," she said softly. "You'll stay with Daddy and his friend. Just for a bit." Caleb frowned. "Are you coming too?" "I'll visit all the time. And we can talk every day." He nodded slowly, but his hand clung to hers tightly as they reached the doorstep of Andrew's townhouse. Eliza kissed his forehead 3 times before leaving. 3 times. A ritual since he was a baby. She didn't cry until she was back on the freeway, driving south alone with an empty car seat behind her. That night, she walked through her quiet house and stood at the doorway of his room. It still smelled of him, warm milk, crayons, and strawberry shampoo. She pulled the star-shaped locket from the drawer where she had hidden it and crushed it beneath her heel. There would be no more gifts, no more photographs, no more mercy. From this moment on, Eliza would stop reacting. She would start hunting. Eliza spent the next 2 days in near silence, her home stripped of the usual chaos that came with Caleb's presence. No cartoons humming in the background. No stray socks or peanut butter fingerprints on the fridge. Just silence. The kind that stings. But it gave her clarity. She stood at her kitchen counter, mapping out a plan. Miranda wanted Caleb. She believed he was hers. And no amount of truth or pleading would break through that belief. The only option left was bait. A trap. She retrieved a burner phone she had bought weeks earlier, just in case. Then she opened the laptop and signed into a new email, freshly created, under a name Miranda would recognize. Rosie Newman, 32. That was the name of Miranda's former caseworker. The one she hated. The one she had blamed for taking her baby away when she was a teenager. Eliza typed, "I know where he is. We need to talk. You can't protect him from her if you keep hiding. Come to the same place. Friday, midnight." She sent it to Miranda's last known alias. A dummy Instagram account that had posted a blurry image of Caleb's school 2 weeks ago. She had no idea if Miranda still checked it, but it was worth a try. Then she waited. Hours passed. Then a day. Nothing. But late Thursday evening, she saw the read notification flash. Seen. That was all she needed. On Friday night, Eliza parked behind the community center in an abandoned lot overgrown with weeds. The place was boarded up, shut down since the pandemic, and surrounded by chain-link fencing. It was the same place Miranda had been caught loitering months earlier. Eliza arrived early, clad in black. A small GoPro was clipped to her coat. In her hand, a pepper spray canister. And on her phone, she had Alvarez on speed dial. She hid between 2 rusted dumpsters and waited. Midnight came and went. For 30 minutes, nothing. Then, a shadow moved along the far side of the fence. Miranda. She crept forward, hoodie pulled tight, a plastic carrier bag in one hand. Her footsteps were quiet, practiced. She paused near the old service entrance and knelt beside something. Eliza stayed still. Miranda pulled out a framed photo and set it on the ground. It was a picture of Caleb. Then she began to speak. "He's so much bigger now," Miranda whispered to the night. "I saw him smile last week. I knew he remembered me." Eliza tightened her grip on the spray. "I made a promise," Miranda continued. "I made a promise to protect him, even if it means taking him away from you." That was it. Eliza rose quickly and turned on the camera light. "Don't move," she said, her voice hard and unwavering. Miranda jolted back, startled, her hand reaching into the plastic bag. "Stay right there. You're being recorded." Miranda's eyes widened, wild and glinting with tears. "You lied," she hissed. "You're not Rosie. You're her. The thief." "I'm the mother," Eliza said coldly. "And you've been stalking a child." "No," Miranda said, her voice cracking.
You don't understand.
"He was mine first. Before anyone else. Before they took him from me." Eliza raised the phone. "This entire conversation is being recorded.
You need to walk away now.
Or the police will come for you tonight." Miranda trembled. For a moment, it looked like she might lunge. But then she dropped the bag. It clattered on the pavement. Inside, a soft toy Eliza recognized as Caleb's. The one he had lost weeks ago. Miranda stepped back. "I won't stop," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You can take him away, but I'll always find him." And with that, she disappeared into the dark. Eliza called Alvarez immediately. Within minutes, officers flooded the area, combing through alleyways and neighboring streets. But Miranda was gone again. Still, this time they had her voice. Her confession. Her face, caught in the lens of Eliza's camera. It was no longer a case of trespassing or obsession. Now it was premeditated intent. That night, Eliza returned home and locked every door twice. She sat in Caleb's room, surrounded by his toys and drawings, and cried until her body ached. But this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from fury. She had warned Miranda. And now there would be no more warnings. The days after Miranda's disappearance were a blur for Eliza. No matter how hard she tried to focus on the little things, Caleb's laughter, the fresh spring air, the dull hum of traffic outside, her mind was consumed by one thing: the hunt. Miranda was out there, still watching, still lurking. She had only retreated for now, but Eliza knew the truth. This was far from over. The police had told her they were doing everything they could, but deep down, Eliza knew Miranda wouldn't be caught easily. She was too cunning, too determined. They would need more than just a confession and a photo. They needed proof, physical proof, that Miranda was dangerous. Eliza sat at the kitchen table, Caleb eating his cereal beside her, his small fingers tracing the patterns on his bowl. She smiled at him, trying to push aside the gnawing worry, but it was hard to ignore the shadows that seemed to stretch longer with every passing day. Then, the phone rang. Her heart stopped for a moment as she recognized the number. It was Alvarez. "Mrs. Stone, we've found something," he said, his voice grave. "We've got an address. We need you to come with us." Eliza didn't hesitate. She kissed Caleb's forehead and told him to stay with a babysitter, then rushed out the door. When she arrived at the location Alvarez had mentioned, a crumbling townhouse on the outskirts of town, she was met by a team of officers. They had already scoured the area, but something told Eliza that this wasn't just about Miranda anymore. This was bigger than that. Alvarez greeted her as she stepped out of her car. "We found a lead on Miranda's whereabouts," he said, his expression stern. "But what we found inside is going to make things much worse." They entered the house together, and Eliza immediately felt a chill settle in her bones. The place was empty, but it was clear someone had been living there recently. Clothes were thrown around, papers scattered across the floor, and in the corner of the room, a stack of notebooks caught her eye. She knelt down and flipped through the pages. They were filled with scribbles, some in handwriting that looked familiar. Her eyes widened as she saw Caleb's name scrawled across several pages, mixed with cryptic messages. He's mine. You can't protect him forever. I will take him back.
It was clear now.
Miranda had been planning this for months. She hadn't just been stalking Caleb. She had been preparing for something much darker. Eliza's stomach turned as she realized that this wasn't about revenge.
It was obsession.
What does this mean? Eliza whispered, looking up at Alvarez. What is she planning? Alvarez looked at her with a haunted expression. It means she's more dangerous than we thought. We need to find her before she does something drastic. Eliza nodded. She couldn't wait for the police to do their job anymore. She couldn't sit back and hope for the best.
She had to act.
I'll find her, Eliza said, her voice steady and resolute. Alvarez shook his head. You can't do this alone. But Eliza was already walking towards the door, her mind set. She had seen enough. She had felt enough. Miranda had gone too far. It was time to take matters into her own hands. As she stepped into the night, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The tension in the air was thick, as if every shadow held a secret waiting to be uncovered. Miranda was out there, waiting for her, and Eliza would stop at nothing to protect her son. Eliza had never been more certain of anything in her life. She was done waiting, done relying on others to handle what had now become her personal battle. As she drove through the dark streets, her hands gripped the steering wheel with fierce determination. Every mile brought her closer to a confrontation she knew would be inevitable. She had mapped out every possible place Miranda might be hiding. There was one location in particular that kept coming back to her, an old, forgotten warehouse on the edge of town, near the railway tracks. She had passed it countless times but had never thought much of it. But now, it felt like the one place where Miranda would go. The one place where everything could finally be decided. Eliza arrived before the sun even began to rise. The warehouse stood in complete darkness, only the faintest outlines of its decaying structure visible under the dim streetlights. She parked a distance away, not wanting to alert anyone of her presence. Before she got out of the car, she checked the pepper spray in her pocket and the phone she had in her hand. She had called Alvarez and told him where she was, but she couldn't afford to wait for backup. Not anymore. She knew she couldn't let Miranda slip away again. The warehouse door creaked as Eliza approached it, her breath shallow as she stepped into the cold, empty space. Inside, the air was thick with dust and mildew. Broken glass crunched under her boots as she moved deeper into the building. Then she saw a small flicker of movement in the far corner. Miranda. She was crouched in front of a pile of old boxes, her back turned, unaware of Eliza's presence. For a moment, Eliza hesitated. She could hear Miranda's low, mumbling voice. She'll never know. She'll never understand. He's mine, and I'll make her see that. Eliza stepped forward, the sound of her boots alerting Miranda. You're wrong, Eliza said, her voice breaking the silence like thunder. You never had him. He was never yours. Miranda spun around, her eyes wide with a mixture of anger and desperation. You, she hissed. You took him from me. You took everything from me. I didn't take anything from you, Eliza replied, her voice steady now. You had no right to him. You lost that right a long time ago. Miranda took a step toward her, shaking with emotion. You don't understand. I never wanted this. I just wanted to protect him. He's mine, and you can't keep him away from me forever. You never understood what it means to be a mother, Eliza said, taking a step closer. A mother doesn't stalk her child. A mother doesn't use fear to control. You lost him the moment you let your obsession take over. Miranda's face twisted with fury. You think you're better than me? She spat. You think I'm the villain in your story? No, Eliza said, her eyes hardening. You're the villain in your own story. And I'm the mother who's going to make sure my son stays safe. For a moment, they stood there, the tension thick enough to choke on. Then, as if on cue, Miranda lunged. But Eliza was faster. She had expected it. With one swift motion, she sprayed the pepper spray straight into Miranda's face. The woman screamed, stumbling backward, her hands clawing at her eyes as the burning sensation spread. Stay down, Miranda, Eliza warned, her voice calm but firm. Miranda fell to the ground, her breath ragged, her face twisted in pain. "You won't stop me," she muttered, her voice barely audible. "I already have," Eliza said, stepping back, her heart pounding in her chest. "The police are on their way. This ends tonight." Miranda's body shook with rage, but she made no move to stand. Eliza turned and walked away. She didn't need to look back. The sound of sirens was growing louder. The nightmare was over. Epilogue. Weeks later, Eliza sat in Caleb's room, watching him play with his toys. The chaos that had once consumed her life had finally started to subside. The police had made their arrests. Miranda had been caught, and with the evidence Eliza had provided, she would face justice. But Eliza knew the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the quiet moments like this, moments where her son was safe, and the shadows no longer loomed. As Caleb looked up at her and smiled, Eliza allowed herself a rare moment of peace. The worst was behind them, but she would always be ready, just in case.